Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members and officers. Welcome to the Planning Committee. In the interest of safety, if the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and the public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble at Queen Victoria's statue in front of the civic offices. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, please remember to sign out when you leave the building after today's meeting. For those of you who have not attended this committee before, I will explain the running order for this afternoon. After committee members have declared their interest and agreed the minutes of the previous meeting, I will announce each item and ask those of you who are here to make a deputation to come and sit at the table. After the planning officer has made the presentation for the application, individual deputies will have 6 minutes to express their views, and joint deputies, who are none, are there? Yep. Joint deputies will have 12 minutes between them to make their views known. After which you will take no further part in the proceedings unless we need to ask a question to clarify a statement that has been made. Members will then ask questions, make comments, and the decision on the application will be made. Both members of the committee and members of the public are reminded of the need to consider material planning matters and not to refer to any personal information about other members of the public. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed, that is filmed, from a camera at a fixed location at the back of the meeting room, and the recording will be on the Council's website. The camera will mainly capture the backs of those making deputations, but there will be some footage of those making deputations as they approach and leave the table where the microphones are located, and of people entering or leaving the room while the meeting is in progress. Members of the press and the public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Finally, may I ask everyone to use the microphones provided when they are speaking. I think for the benefit of the people in the public gallery, all three of you, it would be sensible for us to go around and introduce ourselves, who we are as members and as officers. There comes a time with some members when they forget who they are and they have to be reminded. Okay. I'm Councillor Hugh Mason, Councillor for St Jude Ward, and I am the chairman of the committee.
My name's Kieran Laven, I'm the planning solicitor.
I'm Jane Dedina, I'm the local democracy officer.
Judith Smythe, councillor for St Jude Ward, vice chair of this committee.
Claire UD, councillor for Charles Dickens Ward.
Steve Pitt, councillor for Central Southsea.
Terry Norton, Conservative councillor for Drayton and Farlington Ward.
Summer Sharp, planning officer. Hannah Goldsmith, planning officer.
Simon Turner, a planning officer.
Isaac Kaledo, head of development management.
And Ian Maguire, assistant director of planning and economic growth.
Thank you very much. Now to the agenda. The apologies, if you please.
Yes, Chair. We've had apologies from councillors Lynn Stagg, Luke Stubbs, Donna Jones and Lee Hunt.
Thank you. Declarations of members' interests. Are there any declarations of interest? You have before you the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 9th of October 2019, and I will take them for accuracy at this point. Agenda item 3, Planning Committee. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6. Do I therefore have your permission to sign them as a correct record of the... Thank you. Which I shall do. Updates on previous planning applications. Planning officer. Updates on appeals.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple to report back to members. A delegated decision at 25 Battenberg Avenue, Portsmouth PO2, was dismissed by an inspector for a front dormer. It's a retrospective application. There's been a couple of previous refusals for the retention of that front dormer. So this was another go at it from the applicant, but the inspector agreed it was somewhat too intrusive and large on that particular property. So the inspector agreed with the council and dismissed that appeal. At 29 Marmion Road in Southsea Town Centre, some members may remember this application, I think, in the May committee for a rear extract duct on the future cafe restaurant. That was overturned at committee with a recommendation. Well, it was obviously refused in the end. The appeal was allowed in the end by the inspector. Members will remember the key issues were the consideration of that structure, that utilitarian structure, at the back of the, physically at the back of the building with respect to Marmion Road, but for the front, for the residents in the flats there. But the inspector obviously considered the conservation area carefully, the variety of design and age and uses of buildings. He or she found that on balance the arrangement at the rear there, utilitarian, yes, but functional. But in terms of its placing between the fenestration, he felt that fenestration was still the dominant feature. He noted that the material was to be the same colour as the render, and he noted a fairly more discrete location with respect to the conservation area and the main drag on Marmion Road. So for all those things, he did actually allow the appeal.
Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Atkins. Do you have any interest to declare?
No interest to declare. I'm sorry I'm late. I was at another meeting. Thank you.
These things happen. I propose to leave item 5 at this point, and which is the update on nitrates, which is mainly of interest to the committee rather than to the public gallery, and have that after we have dealt with the planning applications. Is that acceptable to members? Right. We now move to the planning applications, and can I have Goran Esser and Mr. Bob Levin and Hirsch Karadach at the table, please. Thank you. May I have the officer's report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. This application relates to 104 Elm Grove, which is located on the south side of Elm Grove, to the east of the thicket and to the west of Albany Road. The property forms part of the Albany buildings and has lawful A1 retail use. The unit has been vacant for a number of years but appears to have recently become occupied. The surrounding area is characterised by a variety of independent and chain commercial units, which include a mix of Class A1 retail, Class A3 cafe restaurants, and Classes A4, A5 bars and takeaways. The site is within the primary retail frontage of the Albert Road and Elm Grove District Centre, as defined by Policy PCS 8 of the Portsmouth Plan. This proposal seeks to change the use of the building from A1 retail to A3 restaurant cafe use. External alterations would consist of the installation of a kitchen extraction system to the rear of the property. The proposed opening hours for the unit are 6 a.m. until 5 p.m. Monday to Saturday and 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. on Sundays and bank holidays. Up to 10 members of staff would be employed on the site. Photo of the rear elevation and the existing and proposed floor plans. As previously mentioned, the site is located within the Albert Road and Elm Grove primary frontage, and therefore the main policy consideration is Policy PCS 8 of the Portsmouth Plan. The policy states that 50% of each section of primary frontage must remain in use as shops A1, whilst no more than 23% of the total frontage of the centre will be in use as restaurants, drinking establishments and hot food takeaways at any time. Based on the information held by the Council, the Elm Grove primary frontage, including vacant units, the existing A1 frontage amounts to 47.8%. The proposed change of use would decrease that figure further below the policy threshold to 46.4%. For the whole centre, the existing A3, A4 and A5 frontage amounts to 26.2%, which is already above the 23% maximum. Proposed change of use would increase the figure further to 26.4%. All other planning considerations relating to amenity and highways have been outlined in the officer's report. Having regard to policy PCS8 of the Portsmouth Plan, it is the local planning authority's policy position that this premises should be maintained in Class A1 retail use. The proposed change of use from Class A1 to Class A3 would further reduce the total Class A1 proportion, would be contrary to policy PCS8 of the Portsmouth Plan. It is therefore recommended this application is refused. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, you have 12 minutes between you to present the case, and we look forward to hearing you. It's the right-hand button you press down.
And just leave it down. Okay, yeah,
That's it.
okay. Okay, so I'm Robert Levin. I'm the freeholder of the premises, and I've been largely supporting the applicant with their application. So I've sort of tried to crystallise the various points in support of the applicant. In fact, there have been no objections to the application, but either by the local authority, various departments, or by any members of the public. So, which suggests to me that that certainly the members of the public don't have any concern about an alleged reduction in A1 use in Elm Grove, and they don't have an objection to the introduction of a cafe restaurant in Elm Grove. So in effect, there is implied support for the application by the council and by the general public. The only objection put forward by the council is on the basis of the local plan, which you're aware of, which I now wish to address. The local plan was adopted in 2012 and in January 2012, and therefore it's reasonable to assume that was formulated during 2011. So a somewhat historic policy, which in fact bears no relation to the real world as we know it today, and in particular the use of high streets, which we know has changed dramatically since 2011. So I regard that very outdated report as being irrelevant. Furthermore, I have, in discussions with Simon Turner, established that there are no documents surrounding the policy, and there is no, he hasn't been able to provide to me any evidence as to the rationale under which that policy was created. More specifically, as relates to 110 and 112 Elm Grove, which is immediately, well, there is 104 to 112. I own 104, 106. Another party owns 108 to 112. So, for some reason which Simon Turner is unable to explain to me, because there is no evidence available, and apparently no staff members able to comment from that time, as to why 110 and 112 is excluded from the local plan, when it is an adjoining property within the, they are identical properties within a purpose-built parade, and clearly a part of the same shopping and street environment. And yet, if the applicant had chosen to wish to open his proposed business at 110 or 112, it would be okay. It would have had to have been approved, because the local plan doesn't say that it can't be approved, and we already know that there wouldn't be any objections either by the council or by the general public. So the same business 2 doors up would be approved. So I think that there is a very strong argument in support of approval of the application. I'm sure that some, if not all, of the persons present today are aware that there has been a recent letting of 106 Elm Grove for A1 use, and there is also a recent, with A1 use, there is also an even more recent letting of 104 for A1 use, which is the subject property. I have allowed those lettings to proceed purely as a matter of expedience. In other words, I couldn't continue to endure the deprivation of income and the ongoing liabilities in respect of those properties, vis-à-vis an ongoing requirement to pay business rates, which really takes me to another point that I might enlarge on in a moment. Those two lettings I've just referred to, I believe are unlikely to succeed. Track record shows that they will fail. There have been 3 major retailers at 104 and 106 and indeed 108 for in total about 20 years. They all failed when they had the wherewithal to continue to trade if they thought it was appropriate. They failed. And there's no reason why I would consider that the new tenants will succeed where the others failed. So why are we continuing with the application? We're continuing the application because we need to prepare for the likelihood of those businesses failing, and don't then want to have to find ourselves in the position that we are in today, where we're having to persuade the council based on yet further evidence that A1 is not an appropriate use for those premises. We're just trying to deal with that now. So 110 and 112 Elm Grove, which are the excluded properties for reasons that nobody seems to be able to explain, excluded from the local plan, members may not be aware, are in fact tenanted. The tenant, who hasn't traded there for in excess of 15 years, is Portsea Island Co-op. They're paying the rent, they're paying the business rates, presumably paying the landlord the insurance, and fulfilling all other obligations such as the landlord may require them to fulfill. The co-op are expert retailers. There is no doubt about that, and they're multifaceted. They are choosing to bear the cost of continuing to lease those premises and yet not trade there. I'm sure that that is a position that they regularly review and continue to determine that they don't wish to trade there, given the multiple options that they have, because it is cheaper for them not to trade there than to trade there and lose money. My final point, as I alluded to a moment ago, is the other business rates. The local authority only stand to gain by those premises being empty. Because the local authority knows that I or another will have to pay in full the business rates. Whereas if the premises are occupied, they may actually receive no business rates.
That is, however, not a planning consideration for this committee.
I accept that it's not necessarily a planning consideration, however, it does form, in my view, part of the policy.
Right. Mr. Esser.
Yes, sir.
You have...
Thank you ever so much for this opportunity. Sir, Mr. Livins, we went in details, but I just want to make it brief. We are two families. We've been living over 25 years in Portsmouth. We just trying to set up a small business. It's simple. And one of my points I would like to make, this shop is to be one big unit, and we divided it. That was our plan. So one of the premises been let by A1. So the other one, if you've been granted our license, it would be same. It wouldn't change any percentage. That's one of the points. And the second point is, in this policy, when I look, there's no fairness in it, because it doesn't help local people to set up small business. If we were representing the big companies, we might be granted, like Costa or other companies. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Following that, I would remind members that the matter under consideration is a planning matter, and we have to deal with this in terms of the plan and the extant Portsmouth plan, not anything which we may or may not know about a forthcoming Portsmouth plan. So, members, questions? Councillor Udi.
It's a question for Kieran, actually. If I sit on this and whether it's put through or refused, if the applicant then later applied for an alcohol licence, would that impede my right to sit on a licensing committee?
So you're saying you're concerned that any decision you make today could impact on a future decision? No, that wouldn't be the case.
Councillor Norton, then Councillor Slide.
Yeah, so just so I can get a clear picture, could someone explain to me what currently are occupying the row of shops? There is an active co-op on the corner, or is that co-op closed? No, there is an active co-op on the corner. And then they also have the tenancy on the next two shops, which are currently unoccupied, and then there is 108. What's in 108?
108 is unoccupied. It was part of Blockbuster, and then part of Morrison's, and then part of My Local.
Can you stick your microphone on just for that? Yeah.
Yes.
So it's unoccupied, but it was previously those things. So it's currently unoccupied.
So Blockbuster occupied 104, 106, and 108.
Right.
Blockbuster, as it failed.
Yep.
And the lease was assigned by the administrators of Blockbuster to Morrison's convenience stores, who failed. They assigned their business and the lease to My Local, who are a substantial or were a substantial national convenience store chain. They failed. From that point, the premises sat empty, despite very extensive and energetic attempts to re-let. I'd like to also add...
It wasn't me to extend the deputy. I was just trying to get a picture of what's in the row.
Yes.
And so 104 and 106, you mentioned that they are going to be recently let for A1 usage,
Yes.
did you? So the restaurant cafe, will it or will it not actually be put in if we allow the application?
Okay, so both of those units...
Can I suggest that you direct your questions
Yeah.
to
To
the
the planning
officers,
officer, yes.
and then if we need further specific information, we can turn to the deputies. And that is the normal practice.
Thank you. Yeah, well, so what is the current position of 104? Is it unoccupied? It's unoccupied, but is there a recent letting on it? And is that A1 usage? I'm slightly confused about the application, why it's coming in this way if there is an A1 let on it.
Okay, so my understanding is that when the application was submitted, the unit 104 was vacant. I think during the process of this application, next door 106 has become occupied, and that property has expanded into 104 at the time of this application. That's my understanding.
Okay, can I just clarify that?
I think, does that provide a satisfactory answer to your question?
Yeah, I suppose I'm still slightly struggling, so what is the purpose of this application then? But I don't know whether or not the chair thinks it's appropriate for me to direct that question. What was the purpose of this application if it's currently in A1 use?
I think the purpose of the application, as was stated in the deputation, is that there is on track record, there is an expectation that A1 use will not be successful in either of these premises, and therefore this is, in a sense, an early application for what may be needed in the near future. That is perfectly acceptable to make application for any type of use. Councillor Smythe.
Thank you, Chair. My question relates to the point raised about number 110 and 112 being excluded from the policy. And there's a secondary question. If we could clarify that point that they raised first, I may have a secondary related question.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, it is an obvious question when we began looking at the application at the Albany buildings, which is the 5-bayed building from there to there. It's one construction, clearly. So here's the application site at 104, which is, as has been explained, just occupied in the last couple of weeks by the Chinese food retailer, also recently in at 106. There's 108. And then the last two, 110 and 112, are outside the primary frontage. And that's what Mr. Levin had been asking me about quite reasonably. The Elm Grove Centre was established back in 2012 with a local plan, so work would have gone on in the months and years before then, somewhat historical. I didn't expect to find a reason given for each and every decision about where a boundary of a local centre was drawn. And you can look at the map and they all seem pretty logical. This one is perhaps an exception. It is a bit surprising, candidly, but we don't know why. I wouldn't have expected to find out why necessarily. As I said a moment ago, why the two at the end were excluded. But that is the fact on the ground. So we have the policy in front of us. It might be helpful for me to respond to some of the points made by the speakers.
That would be helpful.
Mr. Levin referred to the plan being adopted some 7-8 years ago and considers therefore the policy irrelevant, and separately in emails he's related that to the high street, the internet, the way we shop and live these days. And that's a reasonable point. Clearly, although the internet did exist in 2012, I'm sure internet shopping and the way we shop and live has continued to evolve. But personally, I don't think that means the policy is irrelevant at all. The speaker also talked about the rationale for the policy and no evidence to provide it. Well, the evidence is in the local plan, the preamble to the district centres, and then the preamble to the Elm Grove and Albert Road district centres sets out the rationale for the way Portsmouth City Council has its policies. Each local centre is different, and clearly when we set up the policies for the frontages, we've got different policy thresholds for the different frontages, which shows an adaptation and reaction to the characteristics of each centre. So we feel that what we've got in Albert Road and Elm Grove is appropriate. Yes, internet shopping may have changed things. There are so many factors affecting business success or failure in any sector, nuances of innovation, economics, location, how a sector is going, customer care, price point, all these sorts of things affect an individual business. But I think the facts on the ground here speak for themselves. In Elm Grove, I would class this as a healthy local centre. If you walk up and down Elm Grove, as I do fairly frequently, the number of vacancies are very, very low, which I think is a fairly strong indication that it is well occupied, ergo it would appear to be relatively healthy. The concentration of vacancies is in the Albany buildings for some reason. Don't know why. Beyond the Albany buildings, there are 2 vacancies that we can see currently out of 50-odd units. One is under renovation and I understand will be open in due course. Another one is a catering cake company that is relocation for business reasons, clearly successful and so on. And the fact, in my opinion, that number 106 has reopened as a Class A1 retailer and is expanding into 104 demonstrates, to my mind, that there is a demand for small, relatively small units for Class A1. If you know this centre, it has a wide variety of uses and characteristics, many of them local and independent. So we think that the policy is correct. It's a good balancing level at 50%, and the fact that it's been reoccupied for A1 seems to demonstrate there is a demand for it.
Well, there's been misinformation there. Surely I'm allowed to correct misinformation.
That is not the information which we have to work on. Is the information which is provided.
But Simon
by
Turner
our
has
officers.
just provided
Sir, I am speaking, and you will not speak over me.
misinformation is permissible.
Will you please be silent? You will not speak over me. I am the chair of this meeting. I have listened to you, sir. I have taken notes upon what you have said. Should you wish to make a further comment, then you may ask me whether you have my permission so to do. I am chairing this meeting, not you. Now, you said there was misinformation.
Correct.
Would you quietly state what that might be? And if you wish to make any further points, I would ask you to make them to the chairman, because I'm running this meeting.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay, fair enough. Okay, so the business at 104 is not expanding into 106. They are entirely separate businesses.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smythe, you had a second question, then Councillor Udi, then Councillor Norton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Turner, for that clarification. It covers part of my questions. I just wanted to ask a supplementary question just to test my understanding of that policy. When the policy was, which is our policy and which we've been going on for lots of precedents of having imposed that policy on decisions, we chose only certain parts of Elm Grove and Albert Road to be defined as primary frontage. And we didn't at that time choose any of the frontage between the application site, in fact between 104, shown on the map with the red dot, and the start of Albert Road. Even though, if one was to look at it again, and I'm not anticipating we'll even do that, there are shops down there. So we made a decision about what the primary frontage was, and the statistics, the 50%, the 23% and so on, apply just to the primary frontage and don't apply to the rest of the things in the road.
Thank you, Councillor. To be clear, the 50% is for the primary frontage in Elm Grove.
Yep.
The A3, A4, A5 calculation is for the whole centre, Albert Road and Elm Grove, primary and secondary frontages. But I think the sort of question you were alluding to, were you asking why the central area wasn't allocated or designated?
No, not particularly. I can understand why that meant. I'm saying that I wanted us to be explicit about the difference between primary frontage identified for the application of the policy PCS 8 and the fact that there is secondary frontage along there, that just to get to the bottom of the question that the applicant asked. Thank you very much indeed. That's helped me a lot.
Councillor Udi.
I think this primary and secondary frontage has pretty much answered my question, but so obviously that wouldn't include the retail units at the end of Elm Grove that include like the tanning centre. There's a vacant lot next to the One-Eyed Dog and Trotter's shop and stuff, so that is not included in the Elm Grove plan at all.
Are you talking at the junction with Victoria Road? Yeah, that area. Yes, that is the central area that is secondary retail frontage.
Yeah, thank you. Mine is question is about conservation, I guess, and mainly about clearing up some issues with occupancy. So we said that you're looking at that. On a glance, there are 2 vacant units, but that photograph seems to show more than that, just in one small area. So do we have an accurate number of vacant units or a percentage of vacant units to hand? Because, I mean, I'm counting, 1, 2, 3, 4 there, is that right? 5?
We don't have a percentage on the vacancies, but to be clear then, again, this is the application site recently occupied by a business. This is the Chinese retailer, Food A1, recently occupied, and then 3 vacant, 1, 2, 3. So there are 3 vacant units now in this building.
And in the bottom photo, that's one of the ones that we've considered, right? Yeah, that's the one there.
That's the opposite, yeah. And then there are 2 others that we mentioned in the report, and I've touched upon just a few minutes ago. The one that's under renovation, so we expect that to be reoccupied shortly, and the one vacated recently by the cake company.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Atkins?
Just a point of clarification on whether or not this decision would have wider effects on our local plan. So should we be looking for a specific reason why we would depart from the local plan in this case if we wanted to allow this, or is that really something completely down to our discretion? If we allow this, do we then have to consistently apply it to others, is really what I'm asking.
Of course, we do like to be consistent. If there were to be an instance where we wanted to go without the local policy, we'd obviously need to be convinced that was the right recommendation to the committee. And indeed, that was part of the engagement with the applicants. To give them a fair crack of the whip, we wanted to better understand. There was a submission with the original application talking about why the units couldn't be occupied by Class A1. And I thought there was probably more information that wasn't in front of us, so we engaged the applicant to try and understand better what marketing had taken place. Was it indeed impossible to find an A1 retailer? Doesn't appear that way. But we wanted to better understand it, to give them a fair crack at the whip to make the best informed decision.
Thank you. I know of at least one other empty premises in Elm Grove, which is on the opposites. In fact, I know of 2 that haven't been referred to, which are on the opposite side of the road. One of them is a closed Oriental retailer, and the other is towards the junction with Victoria Road South, which is a closed chicken takeaway. But neither of those were mentioned. There are 2 additional vacant units in Elm Grove.
Thank you for the additional information. Councillor Udy?
This might be a bit of a left field question for policy buffs. How many times has the policy been broken in regards to properties on Albert Road moving from A1 to A3 since the policy was introduced? Sorry.
Indeed, that's a difficult one to answer.
Are you aware that it's been broken?
I've been here for a year, so personally it's hard for me to say. All I would say is, as alluded to earlier, if officers were prepared to support an application that was contrary to policy on the face of it, with respect to the thresholds, for example, we would have to bring it to planning committee. So some members might indeed remember if that had ever been the case.
The only one which comes to my mind, which I can recall, is the Salvation Army Cafe, which does push that above the threshold. And that was decided on specific grounds because of the nature of the service they were providing in addition to food at that premise. Councillor Smythe.
Question, Chair, thank you. We do, in fact, on page 16 of our reports, have some information about recent appeal decisions that where our policy was upheld. Have we had any appeal decisions against this policy that haven't been upheld?
Again, I'm not aware of any. I would hope that this was the most relevant one, hence its inclusion. Yeah, I'm not aware of any others.
And a second question, please. You know, the cafe, the Albert Road and Elm Grove, I just walked down here this morning. It's possibly why I was a couple of minutes late because I had an extra specially close look. And I know that that building has been a bit of a blot on the landscape for a while since you've had difficulty letting it. How do we keep tabs on the coming and going and the closures and openings of the various uses that will affect the percentage that we're applying? Because there's a terrific turnover. I live pretty near, not near enough to need to express show an interest to this. I'm not within reach of it, as it were. But how do we monitor that? Because we're dealing with percentages here, which must almost change every day.
We do monitor it. During the course of a year, if we have an application that's successful for one use to another, we will record that and adjust our spreadsheet. And then once a year, an officer will walk up and down, a bit like you today, and double check all the uses we have recorded against what's actually there on that date. And if there's something that's different, we'll make sure either it didn't need planning permission, or if it did, we'll investigate further. So we do monitor it carefully.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Pitt.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Could we just get a reminder? I meant to write it down at the time. I thought I had and I haven't. Which two units were previously occupied by the two convenience retailers that were there, one of which was mentioned as Morrison's? Was it 104 and 106? And 108. And 108. And which units were and are still under the least ownership of the co-op and are left vacant? 110. That I did write it down, thank you.
Councillor Smythe.
This is a related question. You did mention, it was mentioned by the applicant that in fact they wanted to use half the building for retail use and half only for restaurant A3 use. Does that make any difference to the calculations? And in which case, would it have been clearly enough stated in this application for that to be taken into account?
My understanding, no doubt will be corrected if I'm wrong, my understanding was that 104 and 106 was of interest to the applicant, both of them. That has reduced down to 104 as 106 has come into other use, but the application was for 104 only, I understand.
Thank you very much, that's clear.
Any further questions? Right, members, I think in looking for a decision, what we need to consider is whether there are grounds on which we should consider departing from our stated policy. There are occasions when, for reasons of commerce or other reasons, as in the case of the Salvation Army Cafe, we have decided to depart from the strict interpretation of the policy. What I think we need to look at today is whether there are reasons in the current retail situation which would lead us to wish to depart from our current policy as it is stated. Members, your comments, please. Councillor Smythe.
Sorry to take the floor again, Chair. Thank you very much. I would like to comment that there are a number of other businesses that have recently been refused, or at least with pre-planning discussions been refused on the grounds of the policy. And it does seem to me that the policy stands up and that we should adhere to it.
You are therefore proposing the officer's recommendation?
It seems early in the discussion to do that, but yes, I'm willing to do that. If,
Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Chair. My main concern here is that when somebody's asking us to do something which is contrary to our existing policy, that we need a really clear rationale to be able to do that. The officers have written a thorough report, and I refer specifically to the last part of the penultimate paragraph on the bottom of page 15, where it says the applicant has provided additional information which states that the unit has been marketing using poster displays, telephone, email campaigns, etc. The last sentence, unfortunately, the information submitted consists of statements of what has been done and market interest received, but there has been nothing more concrete to corroborate or elaborate upon the submissions. We can't vary long-established policy without evidence. That evidence has not been provided by the applicant. It says so in the report, and therefore for us to deviate from the policy and take a different view without that evidence would, I think, be unwise, because that's setting a precedent that somebody can come to us, and I'm not saying for a second that the applicant has, but somebody could come to us and say, I've tried really hard to let this and I can't, and effectively we take their word for it, which is what we are doing if we don't have an evidence base to deviate from the policy. The age of the plan is a bit of a red herring on this one, because in terms of the usages of the primary frontage, and I do note, Chair, that you enabled the applicant to make an additional comment and that Simon didn't respond to it, but both of the units referred to that were additionally empty were in the secondary frontage area and not the primary frontage area. But I'm also aware of a new business that's opened up there within the last few weeks, just the other side of the ongoing traffic lights on the Kings Road side, and of other businesses down there which are thriving. In fact, without naming any names, one of which is one of the most popular shops in the whole of Southsea, and runs a very successful business. So I don't think we have the evidence base to deviate from the policy. I think that it is a mixed area. There have been definitely issues with Albany buildings over the years in terms of how long they have been empty. There is obviously a reason why the co-op are deliberately keeping 2 units empty, if what we've been told is true, but nevertheless they are deliberately keeping them empty. They're not unable to be relet necessarily, they're just choosing to keep them empty. We know at the Bridge Centre that Asda's choose to keep those units empty. It's not that nobody wants them, but they're choosing to keep them empty, and that's very different from there not being any demand for them. So I would think that on this occasion we should stick to the advice that we have from the officers, because it is clear and unequivocal that there is no evidence base to deviate from the policy.
Councillor Atkins.
I think once we're at the stage of comment, Chair, we're past all evidence to be considered, and so it's really just explaining our reasoning. I think I am very close to the fence on this one, but I think I have to ultimately agree with Councillor Pate that in this case I can't see a strong enough reason to depart from the plan. While there is high turnover clearly in that kind of area, and I appreciate all the useful information you've given us, Mr. Levin, about the state of the local economy, and that is very useful, and I am going to keep it in mind for future applications, and as we have discussions about the new future plan. But we're currently working on our current plan, and given that there is high turnover, people are still attempting A1 businesses in this area, with mixed success perhaps, but I think there is enough justification there to continue to protect A1 usage for the time being, and so I think I'm minded also to support the officer's report in this case. Though that could change in the future, because I don't like to see units lie vacant for a long period of time.
Councillor Norton.
Thank you, Chair. Just a number of things here. I think it's welcoming that the officers have said that they do regularly check that these buildings are being used for the correct purposes, and that they all have planning permission there. Also, I think it's worth noting that There are no objections to this, no public objections to this, and if you look on comments in the press, etc., many are in favour of this. My issue with this is that on conservation grounds, there is nothing, I think, more damaging than conservation grounds than rows and rows of empty shops. And I take on board Councillor Pitt's comments, supported by Councillor Atkins. I think it probably would be unfair on others to deviate from the plan, but there is evidence there, I think, that the plan is potentially not working. What people really want is shops that are occupied, not empty, derelict, vacant units, and I think it's with a heavy heart that I think I would probably have to support officers' recommendations here, but note for future meetings we must do more to make sure that these shops are occupied.
If there's no one else, it has been proposed by Councillor Smythe and seconded by Councillor Pitt that we should accept the officer's recommendation of refusal. Those in favour of that proposition, please show. That is unanimous. Sir, thank you for the forceful way and the informative way in which you presented your case to us. I'm sorry that we are unable to come to a decision which will give you comfort. But you have heard the reasoning that we believe that our city plan, albeit that it has been around for a few years, is robust, and that there is no reason which has been presented to deviate from it. So the officer's recommendation for refusal is accepted. So thank you very much, gentlemen. We now come to the second item.
Excuse me, Chair, I'm just standing up for a moment because I have a leg injury that makes me sit down for a long time.
May I suggest, if you are happy to stand, we will regard you as being seated, although you are standing.
Thank you very much, Chair.
We come to 82A High Street, Portsmouth. There are no deputations. May we have as soon as the papers are out, may we have the officer's report, please. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. The application proposes the change of use from a dwelling house C3 to purposes falling within a class C4, which is a HMO, or a C3 dwelling house. The application site is accessed from the front, the high street, where it shares a shop frontage with the neighbouring business. The surrounding area is mixed uses, however it is predominantly retail. Starting with the ground floor layout, this currently comprises a kitchen, living room and dining area, one number bedroom. The internal layout is going to be changed to ensure that the communal area falls within the recommended standards in the SPD. This is currently the communal area. To the rear is bedroom number 3, which would be reduced in size to fulfil the requirements for the communal area. However, this would still fall within the size requirements for a single occupation bedroom. The first floor layout would remain unchanged. This is bedroom number 1, the shared bathroom. It is noted that this falls short of the SPD by 0.7 square metres. However, there is a recent appeal decision at Stanley Road which saw an appeal allowed, which the bathroom did fall short of the SPD. And this is bedroom number 2. So based on the information held by the council, there were no properties identified as in a lawful use of a HMO within the 50-metre radius. This information is checked on a regular basis. However, there are occasions where properties have been included or omitted from the database, or their uses have been changed back without the need for express planning permission. The percentage calculated of 1.1% would still be within the 10% threshold. Further, a second strand policy introduced in July 2018 seeks to ensure that the amenity and standard of a living environment for neighbours and local occupiers is protected. It's noted that an application such as this would not result in 3 or more HMOs being adjacent to one another, nor would any residential property be sandwiched. Having regard to all material considerations raised, representations and planning policy, it is concluded the development is acceptable.
Members, questions? Councillor Udi, then Councillor Atkins.
I'm trying to read this properly, right? So if you want to go to the patio area and you don't live in bedroom number 3, do you have to go around the front of the house and all the way around to the back?
No, there's an access to the, it's probably not on these plans, to the frontage of the main entrance. There's a side exit, so it should be on the floor plans.
So just before you go in the bit where it says black one?
Yeah, before you enter the actual site itself, on the right-hand side.
So if you don't live in bedroom number 3, you have to go out the front door and around the alleyway to get to your garden?
Yeah.
Councillor Atkins.
I had a couple of questions, guys. Right, the first one was about this plan. So this area on the front of the building is the kind of shop area, entrance area. So that thing that's, and that's both the ground floor and the first floor as well, is it? That just ends upstairs as well.
The site is ground floor, first floor, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just confused about the entrance. More substantive question. You made reference to an appeal that was undersized on bathroom that was allowed. Would it be possible for you to summarise the reasoning on why they felt that that was still acceptable? And were there other similarities in the property, or is that not relevant? Was it 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom? Did it have other bathrooms, or was it very much like this, 1 bedroom with 1 bathroom with 3 bedrooms that was undersized?
As far as I'm aware, the applications are very similar, hence why we've used it as reinforcing our standards. The bathroom was 0.4 shorter than the SPD, and the main reasoning was that the inspector chose to allow the appeal was that it would not result in any unsatisfactory living conditions.
Okay. Thank you.
Comments? Councillor Atkins.
I'm perhaps slightly unusual for council. I'll admit that I don't mind HMOs when I think they're a good standard. I lived in one for a while. I don't anymore, but I did. So when I think they have a good amount of space and they're well done, I'm very happy to approve of them. One thing I am particularly concerned about, so I was just pointing about that result, is bathroom space. And I am concerned about a 3-bedroom house with only 1 bathroom, where the bathroom is then not meeting the criteria in the bathroom. I'm also concerned about the 3rd bedroom being carved out to exactly meet the minimum standard, so that the communal space can exactly meet the minimum standard. Now, I accept that that's not a reason for refusal because they have met the standards. But overall, I do think that bottom bedroom, then having access only to an undersized small bathroom upstairs, to me does result in a level of unsatisfactory living condition for that person, being at the back of the bathroom queue in the small room downstairs. I'm not sure I think that this plan accommodates that 3rd person in adequate living conditions given the bathroom space provided. So actually in this case I'm not terribly happy with this HMO, and I would personally propose refusal of this application.
Councillor Udi.
Sorry, can I ask a question again? Go on. Go on, thank you. Just the planning officers, was there any discussion with the applicant to maybe knock into the cupboard to extend the bathroom out?
I think that could be an option. Obviously, we would have to go back to them and make sure that they would be happy. That would be then eating into the bedroom, bedroom number 2, I think it would be. Yeah. I think you might be right along those lines, but obviously that would be a consideration we would need to have with the agent and also the occupier of the bedroom number 2 to ensure that that would be acceptable.
We did look at that, and we thought rather than amend an existing bathroom, better to retain a built-in cupboard to the bedroom. You do spend more time in the bedroom than the bathroom, so we thought with that balance it was better to leave it as it was.
Councillor Pitt.
It's a question, Chair, since you've already indulged Councillor Udy on the same lines. Is there a window in that cupboard?
Not as far as I was aware when I was on site.
It looks like there's one on here.
Where are you looking? What?
Oh no, I see, I'm looking at the lines the wrong way around. Okay, that's fine.
Details of the plan. I assume the reference to flat 1, which is clearly taken over from the existing, should be just deleted. It's not a separate flat, that is it? No, thank you.
Councillor Atkins has proposed refusal on the size of the bathroom because it does not meet our standards. Is that seconded by anyone? Councillor Norton has seconded. Any further Councillor Udy, you look as if you are bursting to make a comment of some great merit.
I'd like to make I think, and I'm going to hate myself for this, I understand to a degree on the size of bathrooms because a lot of bathrooms in Portsmouth are quite small in houses. Me having that issue in my own house, it was literally a shower before I moved in, and they were very kind to put a bath in for me because I had children, and now it's even tinier. I'm disappointed at the size of the bathroom, but as your evidence set out about the appeal in Sandy Street, I really feel that if we refuse this, then I feel like it's just going to be a waste of time. So I am going to go with my gut right now and recommend the officer's recommendation for approval. Please don't hate me.
Councillor Pitt.
Yeah, everything Claire just said actually. We've got a compliant kitchen dining space, and this is only an HMO for 3 people. If it was more than that, then I'd have greater concerns. Bedroom 3 and proposed bedroom 2 are both compliant, one of which is over. The bedroom 1 is a very large bedroom. We seem to be meeting the space standards overall, and we're less than a square metre under. It's a really marginal one, but my gut feeling is if we turn it down, the inspector's going to tell us that we're being unreasonable. Normally I'm a stickler for the space standards, as everyone who's sat on here for a long time. I've been on here 4 years almost now, and I like to stick to them. But I also know from having sat through a number of applications and seen the appeals go off and come back, that when we're being that pernickety, when at least one of the rooms is very much bigger than the acceptable, than what we're looking for. One of them's quite a bit over, and the other one is compliant. There's also an outside space there that's usable, a decent sized kitchen. This is not one of the worst that we've seen by any stretch of the imagination, and we've turned down some ones that look better than this, and lost appeals on marginal room sizes. So I'm going to second Councillor Udy's proposal.
If there are no further comments, we will move first of all to the recommendation for rejection proposed by Councillor Atkins and seconded by Councillor Norton. Those in favour of rejection, please show. Those against that proposition, please show. That is lost. We therefore come to the second proposition proposed by Councillor Udi and seconded by Councillor Pitt, that we should accept the officer's recommendation and give planning permission. Those in favour, please show. Those against, please show. That is carried. It has planning permission. Thank you very much. We now move to other business. First of all, the update on nitrates, and then... Sorry?
Is this a closed meeting of the committee or public?
Nitrates is on the agenda. Then we close the committee because we are coming to the matter of the local plan. So, can we have an update on nitrates, please?
Thank you, sir. I'll be quite brief, very much looking at the update I provided for you. The previous meeting, we were turning the resolution into a strategy to get to publication and obviously as quickly as possible use of that strategy. The strategy has been drafted up. It is currently with Natural England, and obviously the key statutory body that we'll need to get approval from, but certainly support from, so that we can be confident in its use. They have assured us they will provide their comments back by Friday, so it's 2 days' time. We will then take it through, obviously, member notification and detail before we can bring it in for use towards the end of this month.
Members, any questions, comments?
Just to confirm, so we're looking like we're on track for planning permissions to be granted at the end of this month.
It may just sneak into December, depending on committee timetables and things, but yes, yeah.
Right. If that is the case, that you do receive this information on Friday, could a brief note be, if it is too late for the weekly report, could be sent out to all members of the planning committee as a matter of some immediate concern? Okay, thank you. Councillor Atkins.
Just to confirm, the mitigation strategy will cover all of the current backlog and some time into the future, so we don't need to talk anything about prioritising different applications. We can cover them all, can we? Yeah.
As previously looked at, we're looking at this covers a 2 to 3 year period.
Councillor Pitt.
There's no actually agenda point for date and time of next meeting, so I'll bring it out here if that's okay. If that goes according to plan, and we've also got some issues around getting the HMO SPD through approval as well. The committee currently has a commitment to meet on the 11th of December, which I think everyone, at least on this side of the table, knows is the day before general election. You don't know it's the day before general.
Oh, no, I do know.
Oh, okay.
I'm not busy.
You're not busy, right, okay. So Claire's free, but the rest of us might have worn out third pair of trainers by then. So my question to you, Chair, and the committee is, in order to stick to our commitment to get on with this, and I'm very grateful as a Cabinet member to the other group leaders for saying that this is a priority, and there's no issues with us getting it through during the PERDA period, because it's very important to all of us, whether members would be minded to have a committee on the 18th of December rather than the 11th, to enable us not just to look at this, but items that are held up by nitrates, but other things as well. We've also got some quite significant planning applications coming down the line, and in order to get them cleared, it would be useful to have a sense of people's availability as to whether we could get a quorum committee that day.
Councillor Smythe.
I very much second that, but I would also be prepared to offer the Wednesday before the 11th, because we won't be quite so...
I think we're already having a meeting on the Wednesday before.
We're already having, so this is the second meeting of the
is
That's fine, yeah.
The situation is that we have an earlier meeting in December to deal with some of the backlog. The 11th of December was down to be a normal meeting, and I think that the suggestion which Councillor Pitt has made and Councillor Smythe has seconded, that we should delay that to the 18th, is a very sensible one. I doubt whether we could be quoried on the 11th. Councillor Atkins?
My only comment was that I'd be prepared to meet again earlier in that week as well. So if we needed to have two in the weeks beginning, 16th, then I could do that because the term is finished at the university. But if we already have a second meeting at the start of December, the 18th is fine for me. Yes, yeah. So we already have the two. That's fine.
I think this is very important because, as Councillor Pitt said, there's some very important stuff coming down the line, including the St James's Hospital site and the sea defences. The latter one of which is time critical, and so we do need to deal with that one, and it will be a major planning application, so it will take a lot of time. Councillor Atkins.
One final question occurs to me now that you mentioned that about briefings for these meetings, given the size of those potential applications, because obviously it's going to be difficult slightly for us to accommodate briefings during the week of the election as well, but it does feel like being briefed prior to the actual meeting might be quite important on some of these applications by the planning officers. When would that likely take? I suppose can we move the briefing as well to the Monday or Tuesday of the week of the 18th? Yeah, I'm good if it's on Monday. But
Okay. Right. Any comments from the officer? No. Okay. Well, feed that back, and I think we're all in agreement that the 18th would be a sensible date.
Sorry? Would you like to change the start time to an earlier one for the 18th, to start at 10 maybe?
Depends what the business is for the 18th. If it is just...
I was going to suggest that because there are a lot of evening things that go on for families round that last week of term, aren't there, if anybody's affected by that. I'd certainly be willing to move that we met earlier on that day of the 18th. Because
quite a large agenda.
I am told by the officers it will be quite a large agenda,
Yeah.
so would members be willing to
10
meet at 10 a.m. on that day?
Yes.
Pending nativity.
Sorry?
Pending my daughter's nativity.
You can nip in and out.
Daughters' nativity plays always take precedence over planning committees. It is a well-known fact. Councillor Pitt.
I think we were hoping, I'd had a chat with Ian about this earlier on to try and, so we could make sure we communicated clearly. I think the idea would be that we would have for example, a major application in the morning, such as the sea defences one, if that's how it turns out, and then have a half-hour break for lunch or something, and then have a more normal agenda in the afternoon. So we've given proper consideration to a major application, but then we deal with normal business later on in the day.
Sounds good.
Is there not an argument to have sea defences, St James's in their own meetings? It's down to you, isn't it, I guess, but you don't want things to get lost, do you, in the size of things? I know sometimes we can move to the chamber as well, don't we, if it's a big issue, like the prison, etc. Yeah.
We want to be flexible to help the officers, so.
I think we will need to discuss the business and how that business should be ordered, and you have my phone number.
Thank you. As we finalise the agenda, we obviously liaise with the chair to ensure all matters get a good airing.
I propose that we now move into closed session.
Just close the meeting.
I'm advised that since it isn't actually on the agenda at the end of this meeting, we close this meeting, and that we meet subsequently in closed session. Correct? Yeah. Oh, thank you very much to the press for being here. I trust you found this afternoon entertaining.